So look, here is the real Cleopatra. Not Elizabeth Taylor, not a seductress. A woman who became queen at 18 in the middle of a civil war. Spoke 12 languages. Wrote books on science and medicine. Commanded warships in battle. Kept Egypt independent against the full force of Rome for 2 decades. And died on her own terms rather than surrender. The Romans called her a whore queen. Shakespeare turned her into a tragic lover. Hollywood made her a costume drama. But the actual woman, the one who actually existed, was something none of those versions come close to capturing. And her tomb has never been found. She's still out there somewhere, waiting. And that right there is exactly why this channel exists. Okay, so first thing, Cleopatra was not Egyptian. Not ethnically. She came from a Greek Macedonian dynasty called the Ptolemies who had ruled Egypt since Alexander the Great conquered it in 332 BC. And here is a wild fact. She was the first person in her entire 300-year dynasty to actually learn the Egyptian language. 300 years of Greek rulers sitting on the Egyptian throne, and not one of them bothered to learn the local language. Cleopatra learned it, and then learned 11 more on top of that. 12 languages total, including Ethiopian, Hebrew, Arabic, and a language of the Parthians. She could walk into any room in the ancient world and speak to whoever was there in their own tongue. Ancient writers describe her voice as absolutely mesmerizing, said listening to her speak was like music. She was also a scientist, wrote books on medicine, chemistry, and alchemy, experimented with poisons, knew exactly which ones worked how and how fast. She became queen at just 18 years old in the middle of a brutal political crisis. Her own brother, who was also technically her husband because that was how the Ptolemies did things, tried to have her removed from power. She was forced to flee into the desert. And instead of giving up, she raised an army and came back. That is not a seductress. That is a warrior. So here's where it gets really interesting. Because the relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, the ones Hollywood turned into romantic fairy tales, were actually calculated political moves by one of the sharpest political minds of the ancient era. When Caesar arrived in Egypt in 48 BC, Cleopatra needed a powerful ally to take back her throne from her brother. She arranged a secret meeting with Caesar. Ancient accounts say she was smuggled into his quarters wrapped in a bundle of cloth. Was it romance? Maybe, but the timing is just a little too convenient. She needed him. He helped her. She got her throne back. And then she had his son, a boy named Caesarion. Giving the most powerful man in Rome a son was not romance. That was a political masterstroke. Mark Antony came later, after Caesar was assassinated. And again, Cleopatra needed Rome on her side to keep Egypt independent. Antony needed her wealth and her resources. They had 3 children together. They built an alliance that almost stood up to the full power of Rome. When they lost the final battle against Octavian in 31 BC and Egypt fell, Cleopatra did not beg. She did not surrender. She died on her own terms. How exactly? Nobody knows for certain. The snake story, the ASP in the basket of figs, is probably legend. She was a gifted chemist who spent her life studying poisons. She almost certainly chose something faster and cleaner. But whatever she used, she chose it herself. The most powerful woman in the ancient world was not going to be paraded through Rome in chains. She made sure of that. Hollywood gave you Elizabeth Taylor. Silk robes, perfect makeup, a beautiful seductress who wrapped powerful men around her finger. But the real Cleopatra, the actual woman who ruled Egypt, looked nothing like that. Spoke 12 languages, commanded warships, and was so dangerous that Rome spent centuries trying to destroy her reputation after she was already dead. Alright, so here is the thing about Cleopatra. She is one of the most famous people in all of human history. And almost everything you think you know about her is wrong. Not a little wrong. Completely wrong. The seductress image, the stunning beauty using her looks to control men, that was invented by her enemies in Rome after she died. They wrote the history books. They controlled the narrative. And they turned the most powerful woman in the ancient world into a cautionary tale about dangerous women. But the real Cleopatra, The one that existed before Rome got hold of her story was something else entirely. She was a scholar, a scientist, a political genius, a naval commander, and the last pharaoh of Egypt. So today we are throwing out the Hollywood version and telling the real one.